Gateway, the Schlafly Gateway event in St. Louis about a month ago or so. They actually gave Mike an award, which was the first annual General Singlaub Award for patriotism or love of country. And General Singlaub is one of General Flynn's idols. I mean, General Singlaub is a icon in the military intelligence field. He's about 92 years old. He was part of the original team that created what is today the intelligence community in the United States. He's about 92, still alive, lives in Nashville. And Mike was given this award. And Mike actually gave a speech. You can see his speech online. It's on YouTube. It's one of the first and only speeches he's done since this whole mess took place. But Tony pulled me aside and said, "Listen, Joe," I was there with Mike, and Tony said, I was working for your brother during the transition, and I told him, "Sir, they're coming after you. They're coming after you, and they're coming after you hard." But Mike's sort of a idealistic Boy Scout. Maybe it's one of his faults. I think he's a little too trusting. And he told Tony said,
"Show these mugs. We can fight back. We can support people that we know are right. We think you're wrong. That's why we're supporting General Flynn. So, bite the bullet, deal with it, because we're not stopping." I mean, for me, this is payback. This is the only kind of payback I can come up with is to organize a conference and go, "Let's do this for General Michael Flynn. Let's just do it. And everybody just get down here and let's get it on. And let's send these people a message."
Yeah. And it's interesting, we saw recently what they did to Brett Kavanaugh.
Oh.
And Brett Kavanaugh is a person, I don't know him personally, but I know a lot of people that know him because he's about my age and he went to Georgetown Prep and I went to Catholic University. And a lot of people that went to Georgetown Prep around the time Brett was there, Brett's the same age as me, went to school with Brett and they know him. So we talked and so forth. I mean, they savaged Brett Kavanaugh very similar to the way they've savaged Michael Flynn. I mean, pulling people out of the woodwork with innuendo and nonsense accusations and more importantly, using the press to really, really drive the message home that this guy is in the case of Brett, is a rapist, is a unbelievable stuff that he went through and what his little girls had to go through. Now they didn't accuse my brother of being a rapist or anything like that, but they accused him in his eyes of something even worse as a 33-year military, 3-star general veteran. They accuse him of being a traitor to his country. And if there's anything that gnaws at him and it bites him more than anything is that accusation of treason. I mean, how impossible is that to deal with as somebody who's just dedicated his entire life to protecting this country? Yeah. And worse, in Mike's case, it was even worse because he hasn't been given the opportunity to defend himself, publicly. He'll have that opportunity soon enough, but this is kind of what's, driving our anxiety, but we're holding our fire until the time that we can let it out.
Joe, we can't talk very much about the case, and I don't expect you to do that at all. I've just been handed this bulletin flash. Oh, okay. I have a very basic question that I'm going to address here in just a minute.
Okay.
It seems to me that the FBI agents who investigated General Flynn found no wrongdoing. It was Mueller who insisted on pushing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And more importantly, probably some of the people around Mueller
whoever's running him.
He hired some tough people to run that. He didn't hire a bunch of kids right out of Harvard Law School. He hired some seasoned prosecutors who pull out every trick in the book to put somebody up against the wall and force really it's a financial burden more than anything. I was going there a little bit. When you've been in the military for 33 years, and you don't really you've never spent time building wealth. I mean, you're not building companies and selling them and you put whatever, few million, $3-4 million away, or even 10 million, some of these guys in private equity and so forth. Michael didn't have any of that when he got out of the military at all. And so when the onslaught of investigations came at him, and he was totally unprepared for that. It was like being a deer in the headlights. This was not something he was expecting or he could prepare for financially.
Joe, there's an Arkansas lady who would like for us to explain how Operation Classified helps the general.
Yeah. So you have been kind enough to organize a ball, which people will enjoy, of course. And there's an additional fee for that ball, I assume. If you
yes.
participate. And whatever the leftover proceeds to that ball will go in one check to the Legal Defense Fund, or one payment to the Legal Defense Fund, which we have. We have a Legal Defense Fund set up, and the website is MikeFlynnDefenseFund.org. But I think what you kind people have decided to do is actually, it's actually the first event that has been created specifically to raise funds for for Mike Flynn's Legal Defense Fund. So that's how this is going to work. My wife and I will be there. Unfortunately, other members of my family can't be there for various reasons, most of which is because we have kids, grandkids now who are being deployed. My brother Jack's son is deploying to Afghanistan next week. My sister Barbara's daughter is changing her command, and she'll be up going from San Diego to Monterey. She's a Navy officer. My brother's son is with the 10th Mountain Division. And we have another kid who's going to be commissioned who's a nephew who's going to be commissioned in December. So we have a lot of people still in the Flynn family. As you know, John, we also have a brother who's still an active duty 2-star. A lot of people are very busy defending this country, and my wife and I are just happy to be able to come down and meet everybody, and hopefully I will be able to get the opportunity to get up and say a few words.
Yeah, let me just put a finer point on that. I've said this many times, but you'd have to listen to a lot of programs before you heard me say it once or twice or 3 times. But if you're accused of something by the feds, it doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty. It will cost you everything you have financially, and everything maybe that you're ever going to have just to defend yourself. And you will not be recovering your legal expenses in a brawl with the feds unless it's a deal like when Mueller sent 4 men to prison for murder they didn't commit, and the taxpayers wound up paying out about $100 million. Yeah. And this is after 2 men already died in prison. I'm not saying these were nice people. They were criminals by and large, but they did not commit this murder, and Mueller ran them right in there. He also blew the anthrax case just on a spectacular level. I can come up with a real snarky explanation for why they would have picked him to be the special counsel, because he is such a Charlie Foxtrot. There's no telling what he might accidentally turn up that somebody can use, and they can broker it through the media to make it bigger than it really is. And with any luck, they can spin it, and maybe they'll kick Mr. Trump out and put Hillary in, because after all, she really did win. That's the mentality of these people. So
remember also, part of the problem is when the special counsel was appointed, it was unclear. It's still really unclear. What was the mandate? Was the mandate to find out whether there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, or was the mandate to uncover every stone and every possible potential criminal activity that somebody may have done, even though they didn't even know they were involved in a criminal activity? Which,
like throwing a piece of ice at somebody back in the 80s.
And some of the stuff they went at Manafort with. But, it's interesting they never got him for that back in 2006 when he was filing tax return. Now, all of a sudden, the poor man's going to be going to prison for 15 years or whatever the time they're going to do with him. So, and it had nothing to do with Russia collusion, zero to do with Russia collusion. Michael Flynn's case, nothing to do with Russia collusion, had to do with the FBI showing up at his office and he naively allowing them in because he thought they were coming to talk about security issues with regards to the White House. The next thing you know, there's a 302 about what he said or didn't say to the Russian ambassador, which, by the way, was something he was asked to do as the incoming national security advisor. It wasn't like he was buddies with the Russian ambassador. 2 weeks later, he became the national security advisor. This is a normal activity. They should put every incoming national security advisor in prison for having spoken to any. And by the way, the Russian ambassador was one of hundreds of diplomats and so forth that he spoke to. But it was that Russia issue that the Democrats tried to pin on the Trump administration, which we're seeing more and more as a hoax.
Yeah, after the Hillary campaign purchased a phony dossier.
Well, and that just
Sorry.
Yeah, and that just is the sort of icing on the cake with this, because if anybody colluded with Russians here, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they paid to collude with the Russians.
Yes.
Okay, they paid a foreign spy money to get information from a bunch of Russians who probably are as credible as, have zero credibility. So, we're in this mess. The president's been a little bit hamstrung with his ability to actually do anything about it. Maybe that changes after the midterms if we can keep the House. God forbid if we can't keep the House. I don't know what's going to happen. I think we'll keep the Senate. I am quite concerned about keeping the House. I know a lot of people are excited about the red wave and maybe the Kavanaugh effect. I tend to be a little bit more of only the paranoid survive philosophy.
Yeah.
And, they're going to do everything they can to take the House. And I think if they take the House, we're going to have some significant problems. That's my bigger concern. And by the time we see each other, we'll know, right?
Yes, we will. I'm wondering if, and Joe, this may be this. Sometimes I say, I don't know which is less discreet, the question that I'll ask or the potential answer that we might get. But I'll tell you, these people are not Democrats. I've said this many times, folks, and I say it many times because I want to make sure that everybody hears it at least once and that they remember. This is not the Democrat Party of your parents. This certainly is not the Democrat Party of your grandparents. Maybe your great-great-grandparents when it was the party of slavery and Jim Crow. Oh, but their stock in trade is that they want inclusiveness, just not you. But they want equality, just not you. They want freedom of speech, just not yours. These people are communists and nothing but. I'm using the word communists.
And you're
That's
right.
what I think they are.
And you're absolutely right about that. And I never thought I'd be saying this. Somebody who grew up in a Democratic family. We were Democrats. Back in the 70s and 80s and up in the Northeast, we were Democrats. We were anti-communist Democrats because John F. Kennedy was our tribal leader growing up as Irish Catholics in the Northeast. He was an anti-communist. Our parents, who were Democrats, fought in the Second World War against the fascists and against the communists. And they came back and they helped, and the Democratic Party helped them build a middle class in those days and all that. All of a sudden, over the course of the last 15 years, this shift from being a party of the middle class or middle class values, and you saw it sort of happen in the early 90s and then just accelerated with the Obama administration, with Hillary and Bill, and then the Obamas. And all of a sudden, now we're talking about socialism. We're talking about communism, a party, the second largest party in this country is now a party that adheres to communist values, which I never dreamed in my life I'd be saying this. Here we are.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Hillary Clinton's mentor was whom? Saul Alinsky. And so was Barack Obama's. Hardcore communist.
I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. I think that those of us who were sort of, well, it's just, it's liberals and conservatives. We were liberal and conservative, and then all of a sudden it became communists and everybody else, Yeah. And I think you're seeing this, and I think a lot of Democrats, God willing, but I am seeing this on social media, a lot of Democrats, specifically African-American Democrats and Hispanic American Democrats, are waking up to the reality of what the Democratic Party has become. And they're saying, I don't adhere to these values that these people are putting forth. I don't adhere to sort of this identity politics. I want what's best for my community. We want jobs. We want security. We want border security. We want a strong military. These are things that a lot of these people see, and they're seeing, especially the African American community, they're seeing the failure of democratic governments in the cities across this country, like Baltimore, Chicago, and other cities where it's just an absolute disaster. And they're waking up to it. I hope they wake up to it faster. I don't think they can wake up to it fast enough, because we need to win this midterm. This is a critical probably the most critical midterm we've ever faced as a nation.
You know, I can say it, and I have said it, but I'd like for you to say it the way that you will say it. And that is, explain to people why they need to abandon this idea that their single vote does not count. Because it really comes down to a simple thing. It comes down to the future of this country is at stake. The future direction of this country is at stake. The Trump presidency and Trump winning the presidency has shown us that the alternative that we were facing if Trump had not won the presidency was a very rapid slide into European socialism and possibly South American style socialism, which would destroy this country and everything that people who have died for this country in the past have fought for. Okay? We were heading rapidly in that direction. And it was being aided and abetted by many people who are still in government today. Trump presidency put a halt to that. And one of the things I've been talking to Michael about recently is, and I think, and I'm speaking for him when I say this, we have to make sure that whether you like Trump or not like Trump personally, you have to make sure that his policies, which have been excellent in our view, and his promises that he's been keeping are the right thing. That he's not a flash in the pan president. That we have a solid 8 years to right the ship here. Because if we don't have a solid 8 years to right the ship, we could quickly lose what we have. Not something that's going to take 10 years to sort of waffle into. We're talking about 2 or 3 years, and we become a socialist nation. And believe me, they are waiting in the wings to make that happen. Seen this now, sort of the mobs that have been, manifesting themselves in the Kavanaugh event. Believe me, they're going to start to do that, not only when it comes to Supreme Court justices, but when it comes to local politics. This is going to be part of the norm going forward. We don't put a stop. And I'm very passionate about this. I never thought I'd be saying this because I never considered myself that passionate about things. Having gone through what I've gone through with a dear family member of mine and a close personal friend, being my brother, I've seen how they want to do this, and their relationship with the media makes it that much more difficult to fight against. So I don't know if that that's good.
Gets the message across enough, but I think it's something that we all have to wake up to very, very quickly.
The activist and my wife, who began as the Divine Miss B, then became the Divine Mrs. B, and is now the Divine Queen B, is with us and would like to speak. So I wish you'd join us, Brendy.
Hello. Hi, John. Hi, everyone. Hello, Joe. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Brendy.
I just want to ask a few questions that is being asked in the chat room at the moment.
Okay.
It's literally blowing up, and you have so much love and support, and also the general. They are asking, first of all, Sandcastles is asking, what is the name of General Flynn's book, and where can we get it?
Yeah, so the name of his book is Field of Fight, and you can get it on Amazon. That's probably the easiest way to get it. Field of Fight, and it really talks about that book is focused on the strategy to fight radical Islam. And it's a great book, and it's gotten great reviews, and it's written summer of 2016, right? He joined the campaign. So you can get it on Amazon, Field of Fight.
Thanks so much, Joe. And one more from Patty Jane. Is Mueller a black hat? Is he against us? What do you think?
I don't really know, and I probably shouldn't comment on that.
Oh, understood and appreciated. That's classified.
Yeah. I don't want to make things more difficult.
Q Lago said that General Flynn has a huge army of Q followers that is supporting him, and they just want him to know that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And also, the Kavanaugh effect doesn't have to stop. We've shown that we are able to actually create change.
Yes.
And we should all support General Flynn in winning as part of the team. He is, after all, a patriot.
No question. And so is Brett Kavanaugh, by the way.
Oh, yes, definitely. And so I don't know if you can see the feed, but there's just people sending you so much love and so much encouragement, and they don't know if your brother is watching. We hope he is, and but he will, if he's able to afterwards see all the love and support from the Patriots.
Well, we can't thank you enough for that. I think, like I said before, I think folks out there that have been following General Flynn's case and our family, maybe on social media, we're pretty vocal. I think in my case, I'm vocal to the point of probably putting my own self in jeopardy to a certain extent. I still have a job and run a company and so on and so forth.
And thank you for that.
But the reality is we can't stay silent in the face of evil. And if his voice can't be heard, then we need to have that voice out there. And I want to particularly address the Q people. I don't, I'm sad to see sometimes sort of this fight between Q people and non-Q people on our side. I think we have to stop fighting and stop pointing fingers at each other. That is exactly what the enemy wants us to do, is to be divided. Everyone who is in this fight has to be focused on the end goal, and that is to stay in power. We are a democracy, and the only way we can stay in power is to vote, and to vote with vigor, and to get our friends and our family, and those around us, and to have the right arguments. We're going to win this through arguments. We're not going to win this through violence. Violence is a last resort, but the way we're going to win this is through our ideas and what the president is doing, which is keeping America strong, prosperous,
Amen.
And safe, and doing everything he can to do that. So, I don't know, on my soapbox a little. But I think it's important that we stay together as patriots.
That's true, and it showed in the whole Kavanaugh thing as well, is that it didn't matter whether you believed in Q or not, or
right.
what your opinion on this or that was. They just rallied behind him, because that's what the Democrats have. They rally behind their people, even if what they stand for is insane.
Yes.
That they have that mob that drives them, and I think the only way to actually counteract this is if we employ the same strategies, but not in a mob kind of way, the crazy way.
In an intelligent, right? We do it in an intelligent way, with ideas and with facts, versus, versus crazy ideology and threats
and insults, because that's what they do. They cannot argue the facts, so they start insulting us like we are somehow just, and they insult things that we cannot even defend, like your race or what you look like, your gender, whatever it is, that they would just harp on that. And yes, I think it's pretty apt that people are just waking up and going, oh my word, this is just insane.
Yeah, no, it's very true. I think that their strategy is to denigrate you, to label you with no evidence. Look, like he's a traitor. He spoke with Putin. He's a traitor. He wanted to try to create a peaceful situation in the Middle East by, separating the Russians from the Iranians. He's a traitor. Okay, these are the same people that allowed the Russians to waltz into the Crimea with absolutely no consequence. Okay, for example, and Brett Kavanaugh, 35 years ago when he was 16 years old, is a gang rapist. I mean, how outrageous can you get with some of the things that they've thrown at our side, at the leaders on our side? It's outrageous, and it's unacceptable, and we need to fight against it. And the best way to fight against it is with ideas and at the ballot box.
Amen to that. Because John said to me this morning that he feels that there's a great shift coming. Something is about to happen. And I think we all have that feeling in the pit of our stomach, whatever you call it, intuition or a gut feeling or whatever it is, that something is about to happen. And I don't know if, I'm not sure if it's a good or a bad thing, but John, what can you come into this? How do you feel?
Was that addressed to me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My audio reception here for Brandy's pretty weak. No, go ahead. Was that directed to you or to me, Joe?
No, to you, John.
Oh, what about the paradigm shift?
Yeah.
Well, there are some things that you can just feel, and as lame as that sounds, we operate on this thing called intuition.
Of course.
And I'm just borrowing to turn it slightly differently. I read a little Wordsworth the other day, but in this poem that he wrote on Westminster, composed on Westminster Bridge, never I saw, never felt a calm so deep. He was talking about the power that was asleep at that hour of the morning, and how beautiful it was, and how the sun was casting its light. And I thought, well, maybe it works both ways. The deep calm that I'm sensing, really just on an intuitive level, is that people really do understand that this is serious. They don't want it. They don't want the fight any more than you or I do, or Brandy wants, or General Flynn wants, for that matter. He doesn't want the fight, but he's prepared to do it.
Yeah.
He's not a war lover. He's a war fighter. There's a big difference. These people who are our adversaries, they are war lovers because they want to be the ones who produce the bandages as well as the bullets, and to start enough conflicts where both of those businesses will be bleeding and booming, respectively.
They want continuous chaos.
Absolutely.
Continuous chaos justifies their move towards totalitarianism, right? If you have continuous chaos, look at Venezuela, even the Soviet Union, you can then justify clamping down on the opposition, clamping down on dissent. This idea of resistance, shortly after the election, the resistance movement starts. And now all of a sudden it's resistance at all costs. It doesn't matter if the economy is at an all-time high. It doesn't matter that the African-American jobless rate is the lowest it's ever been. It doesn't matter. We're going to resist because we can't allow success, can't allow prosperity to happen, because it will delegitimize us as revolutionaries or radicals or whatever it is that they want to label themselves with. And we're seeing this. I mean, we haven't experienced an economy this strong in my lifetime, and I'm 51 years old. But if you watch CNN or if you listen to the Democrats, it's as if the sky is falling and everybody's out of work and we're in a depression. I mean, it's like Orwellian, John.
It is Orwellian, and when it gets to the point when a so-called journalist comes on to the public airwaves, whether it's delivered just over the air into an antenna or over cable, everybody gets it some way.
Sure.
And says that things like President Trump had a look on his face during his conversation with his interview with Kanye West of someone who's holding racist thoughts.
I mean, can you imagine that?
Well, it seems to me that you're a lot more genteel in your speeches than I am, Joe.
Yeah.
But being the blunt instrument that I am, I'll just say only a moron would even say such a thing. let alone mean it.
A moron who is the brother of the governor of New York. Okay, the Democratic governor of New York. And tell me there's no agenda there.
Oh, no, not a bit. No.
Tell me there's no agenda there.
You know, I was just looking at, you mentioned Saul Alinsky, so I pulled this up on the web real quick. And this was written by D.L. Adams. The date is shocking. I'll give that away in just a second.
Mm-hmm.
But just a couple of little points here. Michelle Obama. Barack stood up that day talking about a visit to Chicago neighborhoods and spoke words that have stayed with me ever since. He talked about the world as it is and the world as it should be. And all of us driven by a simple belief that the world as it is just won't do, that we have an obligation to fight for the world as it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals, Chapter 2, and this isn't very long. Quote, the means and ends moralists, constantly obsessed with the ethics of the means used by the have-nots against the haves, should search themselves as to their real political position. In fact, they are passive but real allies of the haves. The most unethical of all means is the non-use of any means. The standards of judgment should be rooted in the whys and wherefores of life as it is lived, the world as it is, not our wished-for fantasy of the world as it should be. So he's making a strong case in this quote for the abandonment of morals and ethics as nothing but impediments to political success. For Alinsky, as for Michelle and Barack Hussein Obama, morality and ethics prevent the world from being what it should be. The Alinsky endgame is likely a global utopia in which the people have power. Unfortunately, this utopianism has been the foundation of several uber-violent movements of the last century, which have resulted in over 100 million deaths.
Right.
And so his dedication of the book, Rules for Radicals, to Lucifer, and people have tried to debunk it, but it is dedicated to Lucifer.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. Lucifer is the destroyer, and so is this agenda.
And what we need is a counter Saul Alinsky principles approach. We need to have our manifesto, so to speak, to maintain the not the status quo, because I'm not talking about status quo, maintain the principles upon which this country was founded, the constitutional principles upon which this country was founded. But we have to have a strategy to do that. And we have to be careful. I think this is very important, not to fall into the same tactics that they use, because we need to be examples to the people versus being this sort of underhanded movement that wants to dismantle everything that we have held dear as a society based on Judeo-Christian principles. They want to tear that down.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's this whole moral relativism thing where, I mean, all it is just if it feels good, do it. 2.0.
That's right.
That's all that is.
That's right.
And
don't forget also, it always ends up in their case, and even Alinsky, it always ends up that a small group of people rule, right? Some type of oligarchy or politburo or whatever it ends up being. It's a small group of people who have the power and have the wealth concentrated, and then everybody else is essentially a slave to that movement. It can't be any clearer than that.
I'll tell you what, that deal about we will not lie, steal, or cheat, nor tolerate among us anyone who does. That's the Air Force Academy's creed.
Yeah.
And I think probably all members of the armed forces observe and take that creed into themselves as part of their code for living. These people on the left cannot win anything without lying, stealing, or cheating. I probably sound like a broken record to many caravanners, but I'm telling you, those are the words. That's what they do. They lie, steal, cheat, spin, dodge, all in a quest for power. And what will they do with that power? Power just leads to more power. They're not going to direct it into anything particularly productive. They'll devote some energy to making it appear as though it's productive. And in the end, it will be just as effective and as productive as the so-called Affordable Care Act. That's socialism. That's what they were trying to push down our throats, and it would have been a done deal if Hillary Clinton had gotten in.
No question. Two things that they want to do. They want to weaken the family. Okay, they want to weaken the foundation of American stability in this country has been the family unit.
Yes.
They want to weaken that, number one. Number two, another strong foundational element of our society is our military. And they want to weaken the amount of damage that the Obama administration did to the military. Not only financial damage, but moral damage that they did to the military. And the amount of strong leaders that he got out of the military, that he got rid of over those years. Because, and believe me, I know this, Michael was one of them, but there are others in his orbit that I knew of. Those two moves that he made were absolutely coordinated. Let's destroy the family, let's destroy the military, and let's go after these institutions first. That's when we'll have them on their knees. And thank God for many of our veterans who have pushed back hard on this. And I think it's veterans and it's strong families. If there's anything that's going to save us, it's veterans and strong families pushing back hard against this, this attempt to destroy them.
Well, I don't know how much of that actually got onto the program, Joe, because there was just a breakup.
It's okay.
No, it's not.
Okay.
I heard every word.
Did you hear every word? Okay.
Did that all go through, Brandy? Because it was breaking up big time on my end.
No, definitely came through. It's I'm sitting here lapping up every word. So I don't know how much longer you have with us, Joe, because I know you were booked until 9. Can you stay a little bit?
I can hang around. I'm good.
That's wonderful.
It's still early out here in California.
I love California. It's too bad that
it's raining actually in Southern. Imagine it's raining in Southern California.
Well, it's raining here too, and I suspect that's part of the bandwidth problem I'm experiencing here. We have I don't know how many circuits coming in here, and some of them go down, some of them don't.
I am drinking a glass of Chardonnay.
Right. That sounds like a great idea, really. Make it too. Brandy, if you've got some questions, ask Joe.
Right now they are typing so fast, it's scrolling. I'm trying to figure out how to slow it down so I can actually read it. But when Joe said that he could stay a little bit, they all just almost applauded. It just went viral. And but let me see if there's a couple of comments here. They are asking about the missing reporter in Saudi Arabia. Have you heard of that, Joe?
I have.
What is your take on that?
I think that's a very tricky situation for the president. What you have, from what I can see here, is you have a new crown prince in Saudi Arabia who is shaking things up there and doing a lot of kind of reforms, especially as it relates to freeing women, allowing women to drive. These are, radical changes that he's implementing. But I do think that this action, if it's true that this journalist murdered in the Turkish consulate there, it's going to cause significant problems for the policy of the president. I think the president, supported, I think his name is bin Salman. And I think it's going to be a tricky situation to get out of, because we do have an ally in Saudi Arabia. This particular crown prince has also been kind of shown himself to be pretty pro-Israel, which is extraordinary when you think about it. But his action is going to put the president in a box, and it'll be interesting to see what happens about how the president gets out of that box. And we're not exactly sure, what the outcome's going to be, but it's a very tricky situation that's going to require extremely competent diplomacy and back channeling to figure out what the next step is. So I think we're in some uncharted territory.
It's entirely possible that these reports that assassination squads were filmed. Yeah. They grabbed this guy, and it's almost as though it's almost as though somebody is trying to make a case for bin Salman to have orchestrated the murder of this. He's a Washington Post journalist, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and he's a Saudi citizen. In fact, he's written some things criticizing the Crown Prince, but he was also not necessarily. He was also pretty close to the royal family, so it was actually, I think this whole thing caught the Trump administration off guard. I really do. I don't think they were expecting this. I think this was somewhat of an impetuous move by the Crown Prince, and I think that there's a lot of people Mike Pompeo and John Bolton that are trying to figure out how to piece this back together before it unravels, which would be a problem.
I'm wondering if they're trying to frame bin Salman to make it look like he really was responsible for this, so they can damage the relationship.
That's a possibility. It's a possibility that maybe some enemies inside of Saudi Arabia of the Crown Prince, who is very, very forceful in his reforms, put him in a box, right? By doing this. I mean, look, apparently the guys that went there, that went into Turkey, these were all Saudi intel and military guys. So it could be the military itself or the intel community itself inside the royal family. Maybe there's a split trying to put the Crown Prince in an untenable position. All of this is going to sort of manifest itself going forward, but it's a very, very tricky situation.
Yeah, and going back all the way to
very rapidly.
Do you say deteriorating or developing?
Or no, deteriorate. I think it could deteriorate very rapidly.
Gotcha. Going all the way back to the 9/11 hijackers. The ones it's the Saudi hijackers, a bunch of whom apparently, whether they actually did anything or not, because we'll never know. That whole thing looks stupid to me. The reporting is what gave it away to me. Yeah. It was a little bit, people knew a little bit too much to report before it was time to report it, like buildings still standing and stuff like that, Yeah. But,
I mean, I'm still trying to understand why he even went into the Turkish consulate. I mean, they're saying, he went in because he was trying to get married or get divorced or whatever it was. But, why would you walk into the building and tell somebody, by the way, I might not come out? I mean, how would you know that in advance?
Well, seriously. Don't you find that there seems to be an alpha and omega team in every government? There are there is a force inside that government, no matter how stable it appears, that is working against that government, especially if it's a setup like the Saudis. I mean, if bin Salman is doing things as radical as letting women drive a car, what is he thinking? I'm pretty sure there are a bunch of Wahhabis over there that just would like to just take care of this guy and throw him in the weeds.
He becomes a target very quickly.
Yeah.
He becomes a target very quickly. So I think it remains to be seen what ends up happening.
Can I jump in here? I have a comment and I have a question that kind of leads off of that comment.
Okay.
Okay. The comment is from GSD Alpha. He says, OMG, I hope Joe passes on to General Flynn that he is a hero. I wish General Flynn had been chosen as VP rather than Pence, and Pence was my governor. And then the question from USMC Lambo is General Flynn interested in running for president in the future? I don't know if you can answer that, but there you go.
Well, that's a great question. If he's not, I know that his wife is not interested in him running for president, but I have talked to him about it. I think he feels compelled to continue to fight for America and for what we believe in as patriots in this country. Whether that leads to him actually running for office again, obviously, unless he's pardoned, technically he won't be able to run for president. So pardon has to come, or an exoneration, which could happen as well. But I'll say this: I don't think he's going to go softly into the night. So I think the country needs somebody like him, or him directly, and I think he would be great at it. But I think that he needs to get through, his legal problems first, and then see where he ends up on the other side.
That's a
Yeah.
wonderful answer. So, a true American patriot that will never give up fighting, and whether
Yeah.
that takes the form of the presidency or whatever position.
He's definitely going to come back out and fight for what he believes is right for this country, which I think is in line with what President Trump is doing, and then some, and then some. There's no question. He put it this way: he's not going to go hang out on the beach in Rhode Island and where he has a house and just go away. He's not going to do that. No question. He's definitely not. And where that takes us, we'll see. Actually, I'm going to see him next week. We're going to spend the day together. I'm going to be with him next week, and we'll start talking about what we're going to do going forward.
Well, I'll tell you what, it'd be good to have him in there now. It really would. I mean,
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think it's one of them. If they made a mistake, it wasn't backing him when they should have. I think that the president made a mistake. I think acted a little bit rashly, and I think was, and I think was sort of influenced by some of the people around him that even in the GOP that were not necessarily on board with the president's agenda. And I think it's taken President Trump some time to get his sea legs, as we say, and the Navy says sea legs. And I truly believe President Trump now has his sea legs firmly on the ground. But that first year, especially that first 3-4 months, was so chaotic because they were throwing so much at them. The enemy was throwing so much at them to try and trip them up and put the president in such an untenable situation. And I mean this. The enemy being not only the Democrats, but certain people, certain elements within the GOP as well.
oh, yes.
I mean, I'll say that straight up.
Yeah.
Personally, not being affiliated with any particular party, I think that the Republican establishment has been equally complicit in some of the major problems that the president has been going through since he won the election, including General Flynn's dismissal.
What do you make of this? I guess you heard about the Republican headquarters in New York City.
Yeah.
Last night got vandalized, the building got torn up, and all this, and this is just the beginning and all that. And
yeah.
And I'm with you. Nobody wants violence. Only a psychopath wants violence. But what do you do when people behave like this? I mean, I wonder when all those somebody described it as a bunch of trust fund weenies were banging their pathetic little skinny arms against the doors of the Supreme Court because they just thought it was so unjust. I thought,
It was
I don't
pathetic.
understand. I'm visualizing riot troops with real flexible rubber truncheon just working out on their little sorry bottoms and chasing them off down the street back home. And I'm just wondering, if this is just the beginning.
Well, I mean, the situation in New York is very troubling. I mean, you've got a mayor in the city of New York who's pretty much a communist. Let's be honest. Blasio is as far left as any politician in this country. So I know there are a lot of great New York City police officers and Port Authority police officers. I know many of them. We know many of them. But at the end of the day, the mayor of New York City is the chief executive of that, municipality and that jurisdiction. What is he doing to protect the Republican headquarters in New York City? Clearly not enough. Maybe we need armed guards in front of these offices going forward. Not maybe, we absolutely need them if they're going to be attacking them. But what I'm hoping is that those tactics that they're employing actually backfire on them, and that the American people, I still have a lot of faith in the American people, and I hope that the American people see this for what it is, which is a coordinated effort. This is not just a bunch of radicals running around throwing eggs at a door. Okay. This is a coordinated, paid-for effort by forces who want to overthrow the constitutional republic that we live in. There is no question about that, and I am not a conspiracy theorist. That is the reality. It manifests itself in things like what happened in New York yesterday with this with this attack on the Republican headquarters, and it could get worse.
You know, was it Cuomo or was it De Blasio who was lying down there with the simulating?
Cuomo.
It was Cuomo, wasn't it? And wasn't he the same one going, you know, I am a Jew, I am an African American, I'm gay, I'm all of this stuff. It's like, what's wrong with you?
Well, why did Cuomo do that? Because when in his primary, who was he up against? He was up against this gal who was an actress in what's the name of that show?
Sex and the City.
Sex and the City. That gal that was in. She's this absolute left-wing radical. So Cuomo, in order to appeal to the Democratic base, which has become a bunch of communists, starts to act like he's some kind of crazy radical. And he was never like that. He was never like that. His father wasn't like that either. No.
I'll tell you.
His old man has got to be rolling in his grave watching this. Honestly.
I have.
And how old is this guy? Sorry. Go ahead, Brenda.
Oh, did I interrupt?
No, I was just about to say, how old is that guy?
Andrew Cuomo is probably 55, 56 years old.
Well, that's too old to be doing that stuff.
I know. He looks like a jackass. I'm sorry.
Yeah, afraid so. Go ahead, Brady.
Okay, Bonky One, I love the names, is asking Joe, ask about Hillary losing her clearance and what it means to our enemies, her helping them.
I'm not aware of that. I don't know about Hillary losing her clearance.
Apparently, this happened on August 31st. She has no security clearance any longer. I think they ought to cut the security clearances of probably 500 people just right off the bat.
I mean, President Trump did a public cutting of Brennan's clearance, which was fantastic. I wish he had chosen about, like you said, about 50 of their leadership and cut them all off, because whether she has lost her clearance or not, you can guarantee that she's still getting inside information.
Absolutely.
Guarantee. Okay. They were in power for 8 years. The State Department is rife with Hillary and Obama supporters. Okay. They are giving these people information on a daily basis, on a minute-by-minute basis. And that is part of the problem that we have. The president hasn't had enough time. And again, I think it's one of the reasons why they went after General Flynn as vigorously as they did, because that is exactly what he was going to do, which was to clean out the intelligence community of all of these people that were, working for the Clinton-Obama cabal. But I think, Hillary may have lost her clearance, but that doesn't mean she's not getting information. No question. Why is she so boldly going in front of the media talking about we should act uncivil? I mean, the gall that she has demonstrated shows that she's not afraid of anything. She's getting information from somebody.
You want to hear a good one? This just came across, to use a time-worn phrase, I've just been handed this bulletin, or this has just come across my desk. Now get this one. This is from TruePundit.com. McCabe and Strzok caught destroying evidence during final days at FBI. Huber is running a grand jury. This is by Thomas Paine.
Yeah.
And it goes like this. It's not too long, but check this out. During their final days of access to FBI files and computers, Andrew McCabe and Peter Strzok, before losing their jobs, each allegedly tried to destroy evidence and documents per well-placed FBI and DOJ sources. But they were nabbed by a sting operation. Two of the supposed brightest minds who served the FBI and led the country's intel apparatus each separately set out to allegedly destroy incriminating evidence before their departures from the Bureau, and neither one had any clue they were being watched. Oh, this is rich. FBI Director Christopher Wray had suspected as much, and working with personnel from the Inspector General's office, set up a sting-like operation to prevent evidence destruction, both documents and electronic, two FBI sources confirm. Though at differing times, McCabe and Strzok were under 24-hour surveillance, both at the office and outside FBI HQ in Washington, D.C., and any documents, files, and databases that were deleted or manipulated by McCabe and Strzok were being recorded and documented by federal agents. The original records were restored after the duo vacated the FBI. One source said they had no clue they were being watched. One insider said there were similar patterns in what McCabe and Strzok accessed at the FBI prior to their departures. Were federal agents and the inspector general running wiretaps on McCabe's and Strzok's phones while they were employed at the FBI? It's a wise deduction, one FBI source said. So McCabe was fired by Attorney General Sessions. Strzok was forced to resign after a brutal public hearing on Capitol Hill. Both lingered at the FBI for much longer than they should have, but there was little rush to expedite their departures while the sting operations were up and running and the targets were playing along. So the question is, now what? Well, Huber is running a grand jury, from what I hear, a DOJ source confirmed, calling the entire process hush, given the high-profile FBI link players involved. There's so much to tackle, but from what I know, the grand jury is now moving into the witness phase. Joe, this is going to get good.
I think you're right. I think it was interesting. Andy McCabe was supposed to come out with a book in December. I don't know if you saw that. The FBI pulled it. I think that these guys are in a lot of trouble. It's one of the reasons why we need to make sure we win the House, because what's going to end up happening if we lose the House is that the Democrats will do everything they can in their power to stall everything. Now, the president is still the president and can declassify things, whether they like it or not. But I think there's a lot that's going to come out here in the next few months. And I know Thomas Paine personally. He has a lot of inside sources there at the FBI.
Yeah, he's something else, isn't he?
Very well connected. Yeah.
Interesting name too.
Well, he came out recently with his real name. I don't know if you know that.
No.
Yeah.
That's okay.
The name.
Thomas.
Huh?
Go ahead.
Yeah, the reason he uses the name Thomas Paine is because his real name is actually Michael Moore.
Understood. Appreciated.
He's a great guy. I've had numerous. I've actually had dinner with him. We've talked many times. He's done an amazing job, and he's got a lot more coming out. Thomas Paine does about sort of the incredible problem, the incredible situation at the FBI that occurred during the Obama administration. It really started during the Bush administration, but got really bad during the Obama. That seventh floor of the FBI could not have been more corrupt. Could not have been more corrupt. And we're seeing it with Comey, McCabe, Peter Strzok, Peter Baker, who testified recently under oath about meeting with the Fusion GPS people. I mean, it doesn't. I don't know what other evidence we need to show that the entire investigation is completely corrupt. I don't know what else needs to be shown. I really don't.
I'm not sure people understand what you mean by completely corrupt. It's a dirty setup that was put together by some really, really dirty people with absolutely everything to lose. You understand, these people have their assets seized. Yeah. Many of them may go to prison. It's over with for them. For many of them, it's over with. There's been a rash of firings up there that very few people outside of the Q team have even been able to release. But it's a fact. They're gone. Yeah.
No. Look, I just hope it all comes out, and I hope it comes out sooner rather than later. I'm a little impatient with the pace, obviously, because I have personal reasons for that. But
I want to ask you something before I forget to, and that's about the Support the Enlisted program. You're on the board of directors of STEP. It's an organization that provides financial assistance and training to young and enlisted military families in Southern California, trying to deal with the high cost of living there. Mm-hmm. Tell us about that. And now, everybody, listen. I'm serious about this.
Yeah, it's important. It's important. It's an important issue. And I think here in Southern California, between Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is just north of us in Santa Barbara area, all the way down to San Diego, we have the highest concentration of military personnel in the country. So we have Vandenberg Air Force Base. We've got 29 Palms out in the desert, which is a Marine base. We've got Camp Pendleton, and we've got Balboa, which is the Navy base down here, where we have the Pacific Fleet. Southern California, other than maybe New York City, is probably the most expensive part of the country to live in. And our enlisted personnel, for the most part, live below the poverty line. Many of them have young families. They're in their 20s. They're coming from middle America, most of them. And they really live paycheck to paycheck. And they're one financial disaster away from financial ruin, especially if they're deployed, kid gets sick, a parent dies back in Iowa. They got to get back there. They've got to figure out how to pay for airplane tickets. A car breaks down, simple things like that. And they're one disaster, one hiccup away from financial ruin. What STEP does, which is made up of a lot of, STEP was really created by retired military officers, Navy, primarily Navy and Marines down here. What they do is they provide immediate financial assistance to get them through these crisis points that they go through. We raise money, we bring money in. If they come to us with a problem, hey, my parent died, I had to go back and forth to Georgia 10 times, I'm out of money, I can't make rent this month. We'll help them with rent that month, but we'll then help them get back into shape financially through coaching and so on and so forth. It's one of these things that you can't even believe that actually exists, that we've got our young people who volunteer, by the way, to fight for our country and to protect our country, who are living paycheck to paycheck in a place like Southern California. So we've created STEP. We'd like to take it national because there are other parts of the country, the other military districts in the country that have the same problem. Washington, D.C. area is another incredibly expensive area for enlisted people to work, and you've got tens of thousands of them working at the Pentagon, for example. But this little assistance that we give them gets them back on track so they don't have to declare personal bankruptcy, even if they know how to do it. You're talking about 22, 21, 23-year-old kids who have many of them who have no financial training, how to manage their money, things like that. It's a simple but very important thing because the amount of stress that finances put on families, as we all know, raising our own families, is intense. And why should that be the case for those best of the best who volunteer their service to protect our country? And that's what STEP is all about. It's really supporting enlisted people, and not only just enlisted people, but people who are transitioning out from military to civilian life. We've got thousands of kids still deployed across the world right now on ships, in Marine forward operating bases, many of them coming from Southern California. They come back home, they can barely survive out here. So I felt compelled to join because I'm the youngest of 9 children who were raised by a sergeant major in the Army who spent 20 years of his life, fought in 2 wars, and raised 9 kids on a sergeant major's salary. Okay, so and then raised 2 generals and so on and so forth.
Gee, is that all? Wow.
Well, and others, and now we have some young people that are officers and so forth. But I think part of the problem, John, is that and a lot of the folks that are in the military that are in your audience know this. Only 1% of our nation, only 1% of our families actually sacrifice their children to go fight for our country. We don't have a draft anymore. Some people think that's good. Some people think that's bad. My point is that there are very few families in this country that have skin in the game as it relates to the military. And I think it's important that if your family doesn't have skin in the game, understand that you can still serve the country by serving those that serve, by helping organizations like STEP and other organizations that support military families as they sacrifice everything to protect our country. And that's why I got involved with STEP.
Joe, I know you're not a psychologist, but I really would just like your thoughts on this. Why are these kids joining? They're not joining for the money, that's for sure. Well,
first of all, many of them have a parent or a grandparent or an uncle or an aunt or somebody in their life who is military. I mean, I would venture to say that more than 50% of kids who join the military have somebody in their life who was in the military who influenced them to join the military. That's a big part, especially in the officer corps, but also in the enlisted corps as well. Number one.
Makes sense.
Many of them come from places where joining the military, because they were maybe smart kids, and they might come from a underprivileged family, especially on the enlisted side, that joining the military is an escape from joining a gang or joining or getting involved in some mundane job that doesn't get them anywhere. They have enough ambition because they're such great kids to get out and explore the world and serve the country
and learn something.
Or they come from communities where serving the country is something of honor. It's a badge of honor.
Imagine that.
If you come from a farm community in Iowa or Missouri or Alabama or something like that, joining the military is something that when you go back home, people are going to thank you. People are going to shake your hand. People are going to buy your drink and buy you a beer in a bar. As opposed to Hollywood or New York City or even Washington, D.C., where we've got a bunch of spoiled kids who are privileged and have zero concept of what it means to serve the military. Okay, and I now that I have had this experience of talking to a lot of people in the press, in the mainstream media, I can't think of any of them that I've met who have either served in the military or know people that serve in the military in their families. So it's interesting how that is. But if more people in the press actually came from military families, we might have a different press in this country than we have. That's a huge problem for me. So I know there are people in the press who have been former military people, but it's a small number. And I think that's another issue that we're dealing with. So,
Obama did a lot of damage to the military during his 8 years, and the Clintons didn't help a thing either when Bill was president for 8 years. Those were two sets of 8 years that were the longest sets of 8 years I ever lived through. It was just miserable. It was just controversy. Tremendous damage. And I can tell you, having two brothers that are general officers, lamentable damage and scary damage. Now that's quickly changing with President Trump. Thank God.
Quickly changing with President Trump. I think that there's a lot of enthusiasm in the officer corps, in the higher ranking side of the military, about what the president is doing with and for the military right now, which is really, really important.
Well, it's about time, because it seems to me that, and look, I wasn't there, but I've got eyes and ears and willingness to find out. It seems to me that Clinton, to a not much a lesser degree, however, a lesser degree than Obama, that talk about lamenting something. But I'm thinking John McCain might not have been much better. But I digress.
I don't know. I have my opinions about Senator McCain.
Me too.
All I can say is rest in peace. I don't know if I want to go there.
Can I jump in with a question again?
Of course you can. You can do anything you want. You know that. Yeah.
Joe, you talked about STEP, and quite a few people, first person Jamie Vu, is please ask Mr. Flynn for information, website, details, anything for STEP.
Okay, STEP is STEP, STEP, SoCal.org. That's our website. You can donate right on that website. Not only that, if you live in Southern California, STEP regularly runs campaigns to get clothing. Believe it or not, many of our young Navy wives and Marine wives come to STEP for clothing, secondhand clothing, and diapers for babies because they can't afford it. If that is not outrageous, I don't know what is.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it's horrible. But we have to do what we have to do to support our military families. And diaper drives is one of them because they can't afford diapers. I mean, sounds amazing, but that's the truth. And so StepSoCal.org is the website, and anything you can do to help them. I wish they were national, because it's not only in Southern California. Southern California is a heck of a lot more expensive than Fayetteville, North Carolina, other places where we have bases. But I mean, we have 95,000 military personnel in Southern California.
Maybe we the Patriots can start a movement and spread it all over the country.
I think it would be great. I think it's a simple thing. Many of our Patriots belong to churches, Catholic, evangelical, whatever, even Jewish organizations that run clothing drives and food drives and so forth for their local communities, take care of them. Well, I can tell you right now, there's a gigantic community of military personnel that need the same help that your poor in your neighborhoods need. They happen to be in Southern California, other parts. One of the things we hope to happen with STEP is is to get that big funding dollars, that foundational funding dollars, to make it a national awareness campaign. Because if there's one national shame that we have, apart from many others, but this is one that really burns me the most as a board member of STEP. How is it that our military personnel, our kids who are volunteering to protect our country, live below the poverty level? That is a national disgrace.
That's exactly what it is, and nothing short of it. It's the mothers of the children of the servicemen are having to struggle to get nappies for the babies.
The wives of the wives.
I don't even know what I said. I don't know what I said.
And those things happen because think about your own life. Everyone has their own life. I mean, some of us have a little more money than others. Whatever. We're all in different financial situations. But when you have a financial crisis, and you're making $17,000 a year, and you've got 3 kids, and you live in Southern California where it's $4 a gallon for gasoline, and you're paying highest state income taxes of any state in the country, and it's only going to get worse, especially if Gavin Newsom wins governorship, John Cox doesn't win. I mean, and then you're asked to go deploy on an aircraft carrier for 10 months. It's unbelievable.
Well, has anybody come up with the idea of maybe giving them a pay raise? $17,000 a year? You can't live on. Who could live on that?
There has been a pay raise, and I say this with all due respect to the Trump administration. They're definitely focused on this. It's an issue that General Mattis, in particular, as he was a commander, I think he was a commander out here of Camp Pendleton. He might have been a CG here for a spin. I know he was stationed out when he was a 1 or 2 star. So he knows the problem. And so the Trump administration is definitely having funds flow back to the military. There has been a significant pay raise. So some of this might be alleviated with President Trump. But that's great as long as it's rising with the cost of living in California. I mean, my wife and I are doing everything we can to leave California. And we like it. We've raised our children here, but this is not where we're going to end up because, I mean, it's not a place where you can think about retiring unless you're a multimillionaire. It's just, and I know you've got a lot of people from California who are in your audience who probably agree with me. I think we have something like 1,000 people a week leaving California.
Yeah.
And the military families, they don't have a choice. Get stationed at Camp Pendleton, you're there for 2 or 3 years,
Nobody knows. That's the thing, Joe. Unless we talk about this, nobody really knows except the people who are living it. And it's great that we can talk about it because this is just wrong. I mean, you got to carry a gun and you got a family and you may be deployed. You don't even know when you're coming back or if, and we can't come up with the money so the mothers can have diapers for their babies. This is insane. This is so wrong on so many levels,
It's why I got involved. It's why I got involved.
Well, I don't blame them.
And the board is made up of, former skipper of Kitty Hawk, which is a big aircraft carrier, great guy, and others, who, when he was the skipper of Kitty Hawk, that's captain, by the way, when I say skipper, you have 7,000 people under your command in that ship. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens with 7,000 people, 7,000 families,
I have another question. Sorry.
Yeah.
This one is for you, John. But
yes.
I want to ask Joe if you would mind just reading your text. I sent you a private text on your cell phone.
I got it.
Okay.
I was just looking at it. said, Joe, do you think we can get General Flynn to sign a few of his books for auction at Operation Cast? Sure, no problem. I'll have him send them directly to you guys, right? Should I do that?
That will be absolutely wonderful. We can work out the details after the show, but
okay.
That's a wonderful. Did you hear that, everyone out there in YouTube land? We're going to have signed copies of General Flynn's book available at Operation Classified to raise funds for General Flynn.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And if you cannot make it to Operation Classified, we will have a few online available as well. So thank you for that, Joe. The question to John is, John, I've got a question, also a private message that came in asking, what do you think of the collective insanity that we now see on the left, and do we have to worry about it?
The collective insanity that we have on the left, and what should we do about it?
Yeah, what should we do, and do we need to worry?
Yes, I don't think we need to worry, because all that's going to do is steal your time, but I think we need to be very concerned about it and be on the lookout for it. Statistically, here's another rerun, folks. 18% of all of the Americans you see around you, this is not including the illegal aliens because they're not part of the survey. So you can add some more people if they were included. 18% of everybody you see walking around out there, I know statistics, but it's a measurement, have either been diagnosed with or are currently being treated for some form of mental illness. Now, this number does not, and that's almost 1 in 5.
Yeah.
This does not include people who are suffering from some form of mental illness, who have been neither diagnosed nor are undergoing treatment. So there's a bunch of them out there. And yes, we should be concerned. This is why this aberrant behavior is being displayed all over the country. This is why you see the crazy that you do, because it is crazy. They're not being helped. Joe, your comments.
No, John, I think we should be very worried. Rand Paul said it very well the last couple of days when you hear Eric Holder talking about kicking people, Hillary talking about, not being civil. He's saying, and his comment was, they have to understand that there are an enormous amount of people that are mentally unstable in this country. They're going to act on those words coming from people like Eric Holder and Hillary Clinton. And so it's very dangerous, and I think we should be very, very concerned, especially since the Democratic Party seems to want to revel in this sort of civil insurrection rhetoric that they're throwing out there. So my feeling is we should be very concerned. They tried to assassinate a number of Republican congressmen last year. Rand Paul himself was attacked in front of his yard while he was doing yard work. This is not going to stop anytime soon. So I think we should be very concerned. Absolutely. I am very concerned. I'm concerned for myself. I'm concerned, when I go out in public with my brother, quite honestly.
And you should be.
And we are.
Yeah. And okay, well, good. Well, I'm trusting that the appropriate countermeasures have been put into place already. But folks, this is serious. There was a GOP headquarters up in Wyoming got burned to the ground. We had this attack on this historic building in New York City yesterday. These people are insane. Look, there are some things that are just the way they are. And one of those things is this. Some people are inclined to violence. They don't want to talk. They can't be cajoled. They can't be converted. They can't be made to understand. They can't be patronized. They're focused on one thing, like a bull looking at that red cape.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for anything except red. And when they see it, they attack it. In this case, the red that bull is trying to hit is anybody on the right side of the aisle. And we know there are some rats in the Republican Party. They're absolute abject rat-like in their behavior. They will be ferreted out. You'll excuse the unintended. They will be ferreted out as time goes by. But the biggest threat is on the left. Listen, this is not some made-up word or expression du jour. They are communists. Communism is a criminal enterprise.
Yeah. And John,
I'm sorry. Roll. Go ahead.
Take it to another level. You're 100% right. And here's what people need to also understand, and I say this with all honesty. This is not some random acts of violence. This is a coordinated, paid-for effort that we have never seen before to this extent. Okay, there are strong, wealthy forces behind this. There's no question in my mind about it. I say that, anybody that knows me knows that I'm not my wife's more of a conspiracy theorist than I am. I don't like conspiracies. I can tell you right now, this is not a conspiracy. This is the truth. This is a coordinated effort. You saw it with the Kavanaugh thing. You saw it with what happened to General Flynn and others. This is and you're seeing it now with what they're doing in, destroying the GOP headquarters in New York. This is a coordinated effort. This is a paid-for coordinated effort by a group of, wealthy people.
Yeah, the name George Soros comes to mind, and I'm wondering why, since it can be proven that he funds organizations that commit acts which, by the dictionary's definition, these are acts of sedition. I want to know why this guy hasn't been at least, indicted.
I think President Trump is the first one that actually has called him out on it. He called him out publicly on that on a tweet recently.
Yep.
And I think that's a big move. I think that sends a signal, at least, that we know what you're up to. We're watching this, and we're not going to necessarily lay down and take it. And so that was good to see that with President Trump. I mean, Soros isn't the only one. Tom Steyer, quite honestly, a lot of the money in Silicon Valley is behind this. So much money there. The whole Bay Area mafia, I like to call it. These people have so much capital to deploy towards this. Anyway, it's something we have to be very vigilant about.
Yes, we do. You've been very generous with your time. Do you know we have 26 days, 22 hours, 9 minutes, and 40 seconds mark until Operation Classified? And I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see the people show up. I want to see the people. I want to see their faces. I want to shake their hands. I want us to be together on this mission to send this message that we're not letting General Flynn go it alone. We're not, or his family. I mean, you saw what happened to Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
He was up there almost moved to tears. He was moved to tears. Well, it wasn't for himself. Only some disgusting, soulless Marxist would think such a thing. He was thinking of his little daughters.
He was.
Who cannot be fully insulated from these salacious, disgusting assaults on his character.
Unbelievable.
He is those girls' daddy.
Yeah.
He wasn't crying for himself. He was crying for them.
And here's the thing about Brett Kavanaugh, let's face it. You look at Brett Kavanaugh is the best of what we have to offer. Okay, this is a guy who's devoutly religious, who's a great family man, who people who know him, women, men who work for him, love him. And there's nothing in his character that had anything to do with the attacks that they made on him. When you're 16, 17 years old and you drink a few beers and you raise hell, so what?
Really, we did stuff when I was 15 or 16 we should have been executed for.
Exactly. When they started talking about stuff he did in high school and stuff, I said, are they really going to go there with this? Are they really going to go there? And let's face it. And I'm gonna have to get off because I got to get some dinner going. What? Have you heard anything in the news about Keith Ellison? Have you heard anything? He's running for Attorney General of the state of Minnesota. He's the second in command of the Democratic National Committee. There's absolute corroborated evidence that he beat his girlfriend from her son and others. Yep. And you hear nothing in the media about this.
Well, they decided not to do anything about it. I understand that those charges have been withdrawn. Or the complaint's been withdrawn.
Miraculously.
Yeah, how'd that happen? Somebody get threatened to be thrown in the weeds if they didn't pull it?
And guess what? Have you seen anything on CNN about Keith Ellison or MSNBC? No, but they're going to call Kanye a bunch of names. They're going to call him racist names. Okay, yet Keith Ellison gets off scot-free. Kanye, because he supports President Trump, is a uneducated Negro. I mean, how disgusting is this?
Oh, no, it was worse than that. I don't remember who that CNN guy was who called him that. He called him Negro, not Negro. He said Negro.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously? But we're the racists.
There's nothing that burns me more than racism. I hate racism. It's one of these things that, again, coming from a military family and the fact that the military is the great melting pot of this country. We don't care in the military. We don't care what color we only see green. We see a uniform and a green uniform. We don't see color.
Right.
It's the only color we see. So
everybody's the same color in a foxhole, aren't they?
Everybody's the same color. So anyway, I think we have to think about how we heal as a nation, how we get beyond this.
Yeah.
I do.
Well,
I do feel like
my warlike nature comes out of me when I see what these people are trying to do to the country. But I agree with you. What we want is peace. We don't want this fight, but they're trying to goad us into one. And I just say this: if this comes down to it, just remember, Marxists, you wanted this.
Yeah,
we don't.
Right. They called for it.
Yep.
None of us. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to have to tune out.
I know. I don't want you to go, but I know you got to do it. So listen, thank you so much for your time and for everything that you're doing for the enlisted people and everything else. We're going to see what we can do to spread STEP nationally.
Good.
And STEP. SoCal.org. Okay. All right. God bless you. God
Randy,
bless.
Thank you too.
See you in November.
Cheers. God bless, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That is a great man. Brenda, you still on the line?
Oh, yes, I am. I love this. Thanks for giving us this, John, for agreeing to do Soapbox on Fridays. This was absolutely wonderful. And just the comments that I've been watching, absolutely wonderful. Thank you for the great support on our first show here on Soapbox, guys and gals.
Yes, thanks very much for letting us come onto the platform. It's great. I love the Patriot Soapbox 24/7, and the people that I've gotten to know as best we can, being, somewhat anonymous from each other without being completely anonymous. But we're not next door neighbors. Let's put it that way. It's a great crew to be working with, and they do some good work. And here's the best part: the ones who are blowing up the comments section, the ones who are listening, they're the ones that are making this happen. We can sit here and talk about this stuff all day long, but if nobody's listening, what's the point?
That's so true.
But there is a point, because people are listening, and they're getting energized, they're getting jacked up, they're ready to get it on, and they want to do it the right way. They're not violent people. They don't want it. Just like that one question, should we be worried about this? It's like, well, what are you worried about? They're worried that they may have to engage them, because I say again, nobody in their right mind wants to engage somebody. Every physical confrontation is potentially life-threatening. It's just a fact. If you can slip on a banana peel and crack your coconut open, then a brawl with any other human being, these humans are dangerous. You get them jacked up and get them fighting, and they'll hurt you. Nobody wants this. You put weapons in their hands, or they'll fashion one, and they're even more dangerous. We don't want this. This is the part of human nature we were put on planet Earth to get rid of, mitigate, minimalize in our lives. We were not born to wage war. We were born to procreate, to nurture life, to bring life forward, which is why this Marxist agenda, this is a death culture. There's no wonder the witches are all getting together now. The witches are going to do a whammy hooba juba on Brett Kavanaugh. Oh, really? Well, all I can say is keep fooling around, and enough people will pray, and you're going to be hoisted by your own petard, which is what you deserve. But you've rejected Christ, you have rejected God, and you think you've got this? You don't have anything except the chrome handle on your own toilet in which you are standing. That's what's going to happen to you. The problem is, you start fooling around like this spiritually, you start taunting God the Father, you start mocking Jesus Christ, his son. Really? Well, I already know how that's going to work out for you. The question is, do you? I implore you, turn away from this. You're not going to make it. You're being deceived on a spectacular level. Your master, Satan, doesn't care about you. You're made in the image of God. Well, he hates everything that's made in the image of God, including himself. which is the biggest problem with evil. Practitioners of evil to a person hate themselves more even than their victims.
Wow.
Just saying. And this has got to be defeated. And it will be. And the people who are in the audience, those are the privates and the sergeants and the lieutenants and the captains and the majors and the colonels and the generals. You are Q. Don't you get it? You are Q. So do it. Continue to rise up. Because we can stop this thing. But if we don't, it will overwhelm everything that we ever thought was good or decent or right or just. It will be swept away. Just like a bunch of stuff got swept away down there in the Florida Panhandle by that hurricane. It'll be just like that. And you'll wake up one morning thinking, well, my paradigm has shifted. And it will have. I say again, it's really hard to destroy a republic, but it's a lot harder to destroy the monster that will replace it. Consider those words deeply because they're expensive. And it took a long, long haul to be able to speak them. I have been, can be, Brendy, our crew, the Patriots Soapbox, QAnon. If we have been of any service to you whatsoever, thank you for allowing us to be of service, because we don't have anything else to do. And if you think about it, neither do you. God bless you, each and every one. God protect you. God guide you. In the name of his holy son, Lord Jesus. Amen and good night.
Amen. Amen. I need to say one more thing before we go. I've had a couple of requests to have Field McConnell on, Kevin Shipp, and I thought to myself, these guests are all going to be at Operation Classified, so there's no reason why we cannot bring every Friday